Hello there. So, welcome to the live stream today. It's going to be a very special show. I've got some announcements to make. But before I go any further, I want to introduce a very good friend of mine, someone who I've known for quite a few years, and he's been very helpful to me with the English Language Club. And he's probably one of the smartest people I know. And just to warn you, he has an amazing beard. So, Tony, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So as you can see from the title, we are launching a course called The Logic of English. It's something that I've been thinking about for a really long time, but recent events in the world have caused me to realise I need to get my act together and make this course. So I enlisted Tony's help a few weeks ago, and this course is by no means finished. We're still really at the beginning of thrashing it out. But we're ready to sort of start telling people about it. So, Tony, do you want to say a little bit about yourself, where you're, what you do?
Well, I'm a teacher. I teach all sorts of things. Used to teach in South America with Colin, and currently live in Canada. And I'm a beard enthusiast.
Okay, great. So, shall I say what the logic of English is all about?
Yeah. What is this logic of English thing, right?
Right. So, well, as a teacher of English, I have over the years, noticed that people who have a good level of English, who can hold a conversation, kind of intermediate, upper intermediate, they still make lots of mistakes. And they know that they make lots of mistakes, and they want to improve. I mean, basic mistakes, and it's kind of frustrating sometimes, because you always end up correcting people for the same things, tenses and auxiliary verbs and things like that. So, and although in English we complain that there's lots of irregular verbs and it doesn't make any sense and it's difficult, all that's true. But at the same time, there is a logic of English. There is a logic behind it.
Yes.
The grammar does follow certain rules to a point. It gets complicated beyond that point when things do get difficult. Just want to say thanks, Lolly, for confirming that the sound is okay. Hi, Julie. Hi, Gaga. Great to have you here. So things do get complicated beyond that point, but people are still making mistakes, before the point where it gets complicated. And I think that's because the way grammar is mostly taught doesn't focus on this logic. It focuses too much on the irregularities and the difficult things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, in fact, you hear it said all the time that English breaks all the rules, or English is so hard, or these things. I think even a lot of English teachers don't really see the logic.
Yes, and I think most native speakers in any language, when you learn your first language, you don't really learn the rules. You don't know, it's only later analysis that sort of makes these rules become obvious. So I guess it's only teaching, it's only through teaching that I've really learned this stuff myself. Just quick shout out to Edith. Hey there, how's it going? And Channel About Everything. Good to see you in Ukraine. That's you, Tony. Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
So where it's mostly a kind of a grammar course. I don't call it that very much though, because I think that people get scared when you hear the word grammar. Um,
Yeah. Well, I
uh,
mean, grammar in many ways is about logic. I'm a rules obsessed person in a lot of ways, and so the grammar of any language is often what excites me. But oftentimes, grammar, especially in English, is taught more as a collection of unrelated rules instead of a core set of rules. And so that's kind of what this course is doing differently. It sets it apart, is it's going to focus in on those core set of rules and then see how they influence all of the other little rules.
yeah.
So there's that logic.
Yeah, actually, I wish I could remember who said this, but I remember there's a famous person who said, in order to break or you have to know the rules in order to break them. So yeah, it's no use complaining that the English doesn't follow the rules when you don't know what the rules are. You know, so
This Picasso,
was it?
by the way.
Did you just Google that?
I was pretty sure, but yeah, it's Picasso. That's what I learned in university. They said oftentimes people hear there's a kind of a urban legend that Picasso was a terrible artist in school because his art is so strange and unlike anything else, and so everyone assumes he was a terrible artist. But if you look at his early work, he is incredibly technically skilled. He can do art the way, you know, as well and as fine as anybody, but he chose to break the rules. Hence the quote, you have to learn the rules so you know how to break the rules. I think the quote is, learn the rules like a pro so you can break the rules like an artist.
And I think the English language version of that might be somebody like Dr. Seuss. Yes. Who, you know, his work is hardly English, really. You'd hardly recognize it. Some of it's more, you know, some of it's more abstract stuff. it's hardly, you know, so many words that are made up and things like that. But you know what he's talking about, because he knows the rules, he knows the language, he knows how it works, so he can sort of make things up that don't exist, but people will still understand it. So the logic of English, the course that we're working on at the moment, it's not quite going to get people to that level, but it's about strengthening people's foundation. So if you're somebody who you know, you speak English a lot, you can speak English quite well, you get by, you survive in a foreign country, well, in the UK or in America or Australia, an English speaking country, but you know that you make lots of mistakes, sometimes you're misunderstood, then those are the people that this course is for. It's not for absolute beginners, but I think,
though there are plenty of videos on the English Language Club channel that are for absolute beginners and can be very helpful. Yeah,
and just on YouTube in general, there's hundreds of channels doing making English teaching videos. So let's talk about Module 0. So there's going to be I think there's 10 modules, including Module 0. There may end up being more modules in the course. But Module 0 is going to be the first one that comes out, hopefully later today or tomorrow. And it's going to be free to do. Hey Gaspar, just a quick shout out to you. He's one of the English Language Club members. So yeah, hi there, how's it going? So yeah, the Module 0 is going to be a free module. There's 5 lessons or 4. No, it's 4 lessons. But it's really just a kind of primer to sort of for people to make sure they've got the right level already. In there, we're basically just defining a few terms that we use in grammar to talk about grammar. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's that you have the language to talk about the language.
Yeah, because it's a funny thing, grammar. There's this big age-old debate about, you know, learning a language or acquiring a language, you know. Mm-hmm. And obviously with our first language, when we learn as children or babies, we acquire the language more than learning it, and words like infinitive and pronoun and adjective, we don't really learn those words until we are much older, probably secondary school age. But we still use them. We know how to use them because we've acquired the language. And there are people who say, who say that you can, when you learn a second language, the trick is learning it or acquiring it in the same way that a baby learns. I don't know. What do you think about that, Tony?
Well, I know it doesn't work for me very well. And I do think that there's a lot to that. Some people's minds are more structured around learning a set of rules and understanding things kind of from a core out to the extremes. Other people are different, and they learn a huge breadth of vocabulary, and they start being able to piece together sentences the way a child does, right? And I think both are really valid. And it's harder to kind of facilitate or help someone acquire a language than it is to teach them a language so that they can learn it. But fortunately, there's a lot of value to learning a language, even if you are an acquirer, so to speak, or even if you have already acquired a language. Like you said, a lot of native English speakers, they wouldn't know what an infinitive was if you said that to them, but they use infinitives all the time. They use them grammatically correctly. They know how to use them. But there might be cases they don't know how to use the infinitive, a little bit more of an advanced case or an exception. And if you went to them, if someone said something like that and you corrected them, oh no, you just split an infinitive, or you are you're using an infinitive instead of a gerund or whatever, you can't help them fix that mistake because they don't know the words you're using. They don't know what an infinitive is. They don't know what a gerund is. And this is an advantage that second language learners have usually over native speakers, is they know all these grammar words. I learned grammar in school, but it wasn't until I learned my first second language that I really began to understand how grammar works and learned how all these pieces fit together. And now it's
In fact, I remember I was teaching this group, and there was one time where I wasn't teaching, but there was a new teacher in who didn't have any background in teaching English or learning English. She was just like, yeah, I'll have a go at teaching a lesson, and she was teaching tenses, and she just was like, oh, it's past, present, future. That's it. There's 3 tenses. And I was like, and then so she started teaching this class, and she was kind of just digging holes for herself because what she was saying just wasn't making sense. And exactly, it's exactly what you mean. I think everyone, even though she could speak perfect English better than most of the class, I think most of the class knew what she was trying to teach better than she did.
Probably,
because like you said, she didn't have that academic, well, not, I wouldn't say academic, but she didn't have that learning vocabulary.
She didn't have the terms,
the
terminology that you need to understand to talk about this. It's the same as, if you go on a boat and you call the front, or the if you don't know the right words and someone gives you instructions, they say, oh, you need to go astern and then port or whatever. Those words don't mean anything to you. You're lost. You can't find your way around. You might be able to walk towards the back of the boat and walk to the left or to the right, but you won't be able to understand the instructions if you're given. And importantly, you won't be able to explain to someone else what to do.
Or ask a question. If there's something you don't understand, you won't be able to ask the right question to get the answer that you need.
Honestly, that's probably the part that to me is the most important. If I know the terminology for something, you can ask the question or you can Google it.
Yeah.
Right? And this comes up all the time in all sorts of areas. In computers, a lot of people struggle with computers, but if you just know the word for what you're trying to do, you can always just Google it and find the answer. The reason most people can't find the answer is they don't know the word for what they're trying to do. And it's the same in English. It's the same in anything. But there's so much information about, if you want to know things about specific tenses or about infinitives or participles or irregular verbs, anything like that, there's so much information online. And if you don't know the names of these things, you can't really find that information.
So that's the great thing about Module 0, and that's what Module 0 is all about. We're defining certain terms that we will be using later on in the rest of the course, and if people are watching it who want to do the rest of the course but they don't understand one of these words, well, they can just Google it. So let me turn to the audience now. We've got 23 people watching. Let me ask you, if you just write in the comments, what do you think about the whole debate between acquiring language and learning it in a more sort of academic way? What have you found useful? Do you find you're to one extreme or the other, or do you think you're a mix of the two? Because I get a little annoyed sometimes. You see these adverts for courses, at least I do, because Google shows me adverts for this sort of thing. Adverts for courses where somebody is saying, I've got this great new system where instead of trying to learn like you do in a classroom, which doesn't work, you just I teach it in a way like a child learns. I'm teaching, or I'm helping you to acquire the language rather than teaching it. And I just think that's kind of an oversimplification. Everybody's different, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I'm also interested to hear from the people in chat. Maybe there's a difference in what language you're coming from, and what language you're trying to learn. If you're learning a language that's similar to English, maybe you would already kind of understand enough of the core logic to be able to just kind of pick up vocabulary and put together sentences. Whereas maybe people who are coming from a language that's very, very different would find it easier to learn by building a foundation. So I'm really interested to hear from our viewers.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Certainly, with the work that I've done on pronunciation, the countries that I get the most viewers from are countries where their alphabet, their language, like Vietnam. I get a lot of views from Vietnam, and I think that's because their alphabet is very phonetic. So they struggle with the phonetics of our language because our written language is not phonetic. So they really like the idea that you introduce with the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, that really helped. That suddenly it really hits a nerve for them, and they find it really helpful. I think there is no one size fits all, one rule. I don't think. Everybody, and I don't think that many people are on either of the two extremes between acquisition and more academic learning. It's always a bit of a mix, I suppose. The logic of English is as a course, as a product, is certainly scratching that the academic side of it.
The structured learning, for sure. Actually, speaking of that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was going to say, having said that, though, I wouldn't say, I always try, and I think this is, as co-writing with you, I always try to kind of simplify, and, you get quite technical, and I'm always trying to simplify and things like that. And I know that from the feedback I've had that, people like that. So I don't want to. I say that it's on the grammar side, the academic side, but at the same time, trying to keep it simple and understandable for the average person who's not like really into grammar. Because no, I mean,
Exactly.
there are
I
people
mean,
who
I
are.
am, so it's not
Yeah,
that nobody is really into
yeah, yeah,
grammar,
yeah.
but
There
it's
are
certainly
people
not
who
the
are,
usual. Yeah. But
but that's not what this
and
is about. It's not about,
no.
this is for normal people to
See,
understand.
English Language Club doesn't give you a list of rules to memorize and apply. You always talk about these core ideas, but they're always ideas in action, ideas in example, ideas that you are using and you're understanding as you hear you use them and as you use them yourself. So yeah, it's a much more friendly conversational approach to grammar than what you're going to find in a book. But that structure and that logic is there.
Yeah, yeah. And we don't get too into the terms and things. The terms that we're talking about, that we talk about in module 0, are very basic ones that most people are probably already familiar with. Things like the different types of word, nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, things like that. We're not getting into split infinitives or I don't even know off the top of my head what more complicated terms would be, because I'm not a grammarian. I'm an English teacher, so and I think there's a big difference.
Yes. And I think you mentioned this before. The module 0 it partially exists to make sure we all are using the same terminology, but it also partially exists to make sure that anybody going into the course The Logic of English already has a certain foundation of things they understand. So the idea of module 0 is, if you understand what's in module 0, you know these things, you know the parts of speech, you know the subject, the object, you know what an auxiliary verb is, and maybe you can even use it right most of the time, but you know you're making some mistakes and you don't know why or how to fix the fact that you keep making these mistakes. That is when The Logic of English is for you. So that's kind of what module 0 is there for. It's not super complicated, largely because we're hoping that you know this stuff, and anything you don't know, you can look into before moving into the main course.
Yeah, and the reason it's called Module 0 is because we started with Module 1. We were planning out Module 1, and then we just thought, well, can we really assume that everyone knows all these terms? And so we decided to make Module 0 as a primer to make sure that everyone's got the right foundation. So there's a couple of comments I want to refer to. Vincent says, love your teaching. Thank you very much. I love you too. Oswaldo, my native language is Spanish, which is very phonetic. I didn't know anything about phonetics after I started learning other languages. Do you mean you didn't know until you started learning other languages? Yeah, and I think, that's true of a lot of people, I think.
It is.
Phonetics is a tool. For the most part, there are people who like grammarians who love grammar for the sake of it. There are people who are into phonetics for the sake of being into phonetics, and there's a lot of people on my channel who are coming from that angle, which is great, because I never really meant for it to be like that. But those people are all very welcome. But it's still not my goal to sort of just get really into phonetics and look at all these little edge cases. I'm much more interested in what is really helpful to people. I want to use phonetics and use grammar as a tool and as soon as it stops being useful, we stop looking at it. We stop using it.
Yes, and this is important because sometimes, especially as a teacher, sometimes you have to say things that are oversimplified to the point where someone might come in and say, oh, but that's not true.
Yeah.
There's an exception to that rule. And that's important to understand. There are rules that are hard and fast and you can't break them, like rules of physics, right? Laws of physics. But that's not the way most rules are. Rules exist for the majority of cases, or at least enough for it to be useful, right? And that's what we're kind of shooting for, is coming up with simple ways to express these rules that are just going to be useful and is going to help you move forward. We're not trying to nitpick about every every possible exception. Sometimes we'll talk about them. In fact, sometimes the exceptions can make it easier to remember the rule. One thing, Colin, that you've mentioned to me a few times that I find really interesting is that kind of each tense in English has one kind of weird quirk to it. And I think that's brilliant because it just makes it so much easier to remember when you remember, okay, well, the past simple, that's the one with the weird root changes, or
the third person
simple.
S.
Yeah, third person S in the present simple. Exactly. And I think that, oftentimes we kind of get too focused on the exceptions. In fact, if you look at most English books that talk about tense in kind of detail, they're just going to go in long lists of just edge cases, right? This is one example of when you'll use this tense. This is another example. This is another example. And that can be great, but it means when someone says, okay, when do you use the present perfect? A lot of people, they might be able to give you a list of example sentences, but they don't really know what is the main kind of purpose of it. When, in general, do you use that? And that's one of the main goals of the logic of English, is to give you those simple answers. They don't replace more complex answers, but the simple answers give context to it all. They make it seem logical. They make it make sense, and they kind of demystify it a little bit.
Yeah.
Oswaldo gave us a response. He said, yes, every letter sounds the same in every word in Spanish. That's not like in English, right? That's why studying phonetics have helped me so much with both English and French. Right. So in English and French as well, the phonetics rules aren't just the alphabet. Both Colin and I, having lived in South America for years, speak Spanish, and so we've had to learn Spanish as a second language. Mm-hmm. And yes, the alphabet and knowing how to pronounce the letters is great in Spanish, and everyone kind of wishes it worked that way in other languages, but it doesn't. And in English, the phonics rules are different. It's not this letter always makes this sound the way it is in Spanish, right? The phonics rules are this letter makes this sound when it's next to these other letters, or it makes this sound when it's in this place in a sentence. It's rules that involve context. There are still rules. Now, English is not completely phonetic. There are plenty of words that just don't make any sense. But if you know the phonics rules, the vast majority of English words will mostly make sense. Yeah. You might mispronounce them a little bit. In fact, that happens a lot to native speakers. They call it having a reader's vocabulary. Mm-hmm. If you learn a lot of your words from reading books, sometimes you'll pronounce them very slightly off from the way they're actually pronounced because you're tending to pronounce them following the rules of phonics, whether you know it or not. But that's pretty good. If you can take a word that you don't know and be able to pronounce it close enough that someone will understand what you are saying and maybe they can correct you, that's great. So I'm with Oswaldo here. Learning the rules of phonics can make a huge, huge difference in how comfortable you are in pronouncing the words in a foreign language. So that's a great observation, Oswaldo.
Yeah, and the logic of English is attempting to do the same thing, but with the grammar side of it. Mm-hmm.
And for specifically verbs, mainly in this first course.
Yes, verbs and tenses. Looking at how that all works. Because I hear a lot of people making a lot of mistakes with that here in the UK. People who've lived who have English as not their first language, but they have lived here for sometimes decades, but they still make mistakes, and they know they make mistakes, but they just don't quite know how to fix it. So that's what the logic of English is all about. So I think Jas once Sony says. Master, when does the class start? Is there any idea? Well, so the Logic of English Module 0 is going to go live hopefully today or tomorrow. If you go to englishlanguageclub.co.uk, it's not there yet, but it will be by the end of the day. Something obvious that says Logic of English. I might add a link to the description of this video if you come back and check this out later on. But that's just module 0. We're still working on modules 1 through 9. So those will be a bit later. Now, what we have said is that we're aiming for the 1st of June as a launch date. So now it may not be completely 100% ready on the 1st of June, but on the 1st of June we will make it live so that people can start doing it, and then later on more content will be added to it as and when it's ready. So yeah, 1st of June it'll be ready on the course on the website. So yeah, now let me go into. So this is going to be a paid for premium part of the website. The first sort of course product that I've put out, but all of this, everything that's in the course is available for free on YouTube. Lots of people have made lots of videos about grammar. All this is available for free anyway. So if money is an issue, you don't need to worry. As you know already, you can find out almost anything on YouTube. It's a great learning resource. So you're probably asking, well, why would I pay for something if I can just get it for free? And well, the main reason is to help me. I'll be honest. Because I don't get to make as much content as I would like. I still have a full-time day job. And I'm just doing English Language Club in my spare time. I'd like to be able to do more. I'd like to maybe go down to 2 days a week in my main job and do English Language Club the rest of the time. I'd like to be able to put out live streams like this, like 2 or 3 times a week, things like that, or maybe even more. I'd love to be able to build a team of other people who are writing content and available to answer people's questions, things like that. So that is the main reason, to help English Language Club, to support the work that we're doing. That's the main reason. It's not about what are you going to get for it. Having said that, what you will get, it's one thing. It's one thing knowing that there's all this knowledge out there. The problem is there's also a load of other stuff out there that's not what you're looking for and not what you need. And once you've learned one thing, you need to then move on to the next thing. And it's not always obvious what the next thing you should learn should be. It's not obvious what follows on. So that's the other thing you get. You get the sort of overall course structure. You get. So one thing leads to the next in a way that's logical and makes sense and should be more helpful. And then the other thing you get is the interactive exercises, the questions, the quizzes that we're writing and putting into it,
which is very important, because regardless of whether you're kind of acquiring or learning a language, really practice and reinforcement is what actually makes it, what cements it in your brain. But also, like you said, English Language Club is not going to stop producing things for free. That's still the core of what we love and our kind of passion. And so all of this information, the kind of, we're really excited about this logic of English, because we think that it's really going to help a lot of people have a breakthrough, because we do think that there are some really important ideas that we have to share, and we're definitely still going to be sharing those ideas on the YouTube channel. So don't worry about that. But if you want access to that structured learning process and those exercises to help you kind of iterate on and cement your understanding, and you want to support the English Language Club to continue to make free content that's great and useful, then this course will definitely help you out.
Yeah. In fact, with almost every class every lesson that we've written, I've made a video for. Once we've finished the course, I do want to go back and then remake videos, which will be designed to be put out for free. I'll make a few tweaks to tailor them to the sort of wider audience, because perhaps then they'll need a bit more explanation, because I won't know that people have come from the lesson before, So, but yeah, all this stuff that we're writing to put into this course that we're going to charge for, I want to put out for free as well. It's not about making money, really. It's about surviving and having the resources to be able to help as many people as possible. So yeah, I hear you typing away. Let's see. Lord Man says hi, everyone. Hi, Lord Man. Rajesh says, I'm from India. Can you give simple tips in the different uses of tenses when we speak English, as uses are very important? Okay. So, tenses. Should we touch on tenses? I mean, that's a big subject, tenses. So it's a very short question that could have a very, very long answer. Several hours we could go on. I mean, that's what in fact, yes. In fact, that's what the logic of English is about. The whole course is the answer to your question.
Yes, and we have some simple tips and that are going to help you kind of understand how all the different tenses fit together, and generally knowing kind of at a gut level which tense should I use in the situation. But we also are going to go through each tense one by one and give some really practical tips about how to remember when to use it, like we said, the quirks, the exceptions that maybe help you remember how to use that tense, and like you said, the uses, because you're exactly right. Really, the uses of the tense are very, very important. Sometimes more important than the actual, like what the name would imply. For instance, one of the examples I like to use is a lot of the time when we talk about things that are in the future, we really just use the present to talk about things in the future, to talk about plans. I hope to go running tomorrow morning, right? Those are all just present tense, simple concepts, and but we're talking about them in the future. So that's a use. And so, Regilesh is exactly right there. The usages of the tenses is very important.
Exactly, yeah. And with some tenses, it's more straightforward than with others. So I think the most straightforward tense is the present continuous. That's the one that has the least irregularities. Even irregular verbs are formed regularly in the present continuous tense. And it just means something that you're in doing in the moment, something that started in the past and will finish in the future. Simple as that. Whereas something like the present perfect tense has several different uses. You can and it's called the present perfect, but really you're normally talking about things that have happened in the past. So yeah, when something has more than one use, that's when things get complicated, because you can't say this is when you use it, because it kind of depends, and So yeah, we'll get into all of that in the course. Is there any tense that in particular that you'd like us to talk more about now? Let us know in the comments. James Bond says, I'm a student specializing in phonology. Anyone else? I mean, there are people who are on my channel who are really into phonology and phonetics and things, and that's really great. It was never my intention for the channel to be that. That happened completely kind of accidentally, really. But go on. Were you going to say something?
Well, I mean, you made a brilliant video several years ago that has helped a lot of people with their English pronunciation. So that may have not been your intent to really go down that road fully, but you really did make an excellent contribution on that front.
Well, yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, the way the whole channel started out was because I was teaching English, and in every sort of English classroom in the world, there's this like phonetic chart up on the wall, and most people, certainly in South America where I was working, most people haven't got a clue what it's all about. So, and at the same time, YouTube had this feature where you can called annotations, which they don't have anymore, but where you could like set it up so that a certain part of the screen, if you click it, would take you to another video or do something. And I thought, and you know, most people just use that comment to kind of spam people saying, check out my other video, check out my YouTube channel, or check out this other YouTube channel or whatever. And I think that's why YouTube got rid of it, because it ended up making videos messy. You ended up with all, you know, annotations everywhere. But I think the reason that the English Language Club's videos were successful is because it wasn't just the annotations weren't an afterthought. They were really part of the video, and with some of the videos. And so I thought, well, you know, why don't we take that phonetic chart that's on the wall that no one understands and make it interactive on YouTube, and make it so you can click on the symbol and it jumps to the part of the video that plays that sound. Unfortunately, that functionality of that video doesn't work anymore. Instead, it's just a video of the sounds, which is fine. It still gets a lot of views, surprisingly. Yeah. But if you are interested in that, you should download my app, because I do have an app which basically has the same functionality of that video, but it's actually even better. Where you know, it's just an interactive chart. You can click on the symbol and it will play the sound. Simple as that. That's how it all got started. Like I said, I wasn't really into phonetics. I didn't know much about it myself. I just was playing around with this YouTube feature, and I just got the idea from teaching English from the poster on the classroom. As I started building the audience, I started learning stuff that I thought they might be interested in. That's how it all started. So James, you're very welcome. I'm not sure if that's your real name, but yes. So let's see. Hi Ashok. Let's see, Hamza. Hello teacher and everyone. Hello, how are you doing? So Andrew, I'm a native English speaker, but we haven't done phonetics beyond the basics in the lower grade, and I've forgotten most of it. Yeah. And
he said your videos serve as a great refresher, which is definitely true.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's because I guess phonetics is a subject that people teach kind of very early elementary level students, you know, 5-6-year-olds. It's becoming more of a thing.
It's kind of been off and on over the years. You know, 20 years ago they did it, 50 years, and people keep deciding, oh, this is not helping people, and so they stop doing it for a while, and then people realize, oh no, it actually was great, and they bring it back in. So a lot of people learned phonics in school, like native English speakers, but a lot of them also didn't. And so a lot of people that I've worked with that are native English speakers, they actually don't know how to pronounce a word they've never heard before. When they see a word, they kind of struggle through it. And I've met university educated people who struggle to pronounce new words because they don't actually know the phonetics.
Yeah, and I know people, lots of people in this part of the country especially, who struggle with certain sounds. In particular, the th sound. I hear so many people say f instead of th. And it kind of annoys me a little bit when it comes from a native speaker, and they say think instead of think, you know. It's a useful thing, but again, like I always said with phonetics, it's a physical thing. Making the sounds is always physical. If you don't know how to pronounce something, or if you're making a mistake, if it sounds wrong, then the mistake you're making is physical. You need to think about the physicality of it.
Yeah. Which is why you have videos with diagrams of the inside of your mouth, and
well, I don't.
You have that mouth thing.
Yeah, I haven't really used that a lot in any videos, but I do plan to. That's why I got it. I got it to do a. I'll get it out now. Hold on a sec. I need to move the green screen, so it might look wrong.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so let's see. We also have Liu Xing says hi, teacher, and Hanan says hey. And then hi everyone. Hello to everyone that's new. How many viewers are we up to now? I can't see the
Oh, let me see.
listing.
18. We've got
18.
18 at the moment. I'm sure people are sort of coming and going. So, so if you have just tuned in, the purpose of this video, this live stream, is to announce the upcoming course, which is the Logic of English, Module 0, which is going to be a kind of introductory course, is going to go live today or tomorrow, very soon anyway. And then the rest of the course will be coming, will go live on the 1st of June. Well, not the rest of it, but whatever is ready by that point. We're going to be working hard on it between now and then. So, yeah. Let's see. Andrew says, what is the role of regional dialects on proper phonetics? Should everyone be pronouncing words the same way? So, yeah, so you get, it's funny, yeah, what is correct pronunciation when you get regional dialects and regional accents that are sort of different.
Yes. It's especially going to be a question when you get an American and a Canadian and a British person and an Australian all together in one room, maybe a South African as well.
Yeah, but even even a New Yorker and someone from Texas and someone from Los Angeles, someone from Scotland, someone from Wales, someone from Cornwall, they're all going to have very different ways of pronouncing the same words, and it's a great question. So what is proper phonetics?
So officially, UK English, American English, Canadian English, South African English are separate. Like if you go into a language translation sort of a setting, you have to kind of define which one it is. For instance, there's spelling differences that are official rules that are defined as being different. So some of those things are official differences. So you could think of American English and UK English, for instance, as being two separate dialects that have different correct for those. At the same time, there's also a huge amount of overlap, not necessarily with spelling, but often the pronunciation will really be either one is going to be accepted, but one is going to be more common. One thing that a lot of people don't necessarily realize is, for instance, the most typically the way North Americans think of British accents is the way they pronounce R's at the end of the word. So say a word that ends in R for us, Colin.
Mother.
Okay, so mother. So and in North America, typically you would hear mother with a harder R sound, right? But there are yes, instead of but there are places even in the U.S. where that is the normal pronunciation, the kind of the one that you hear talked about would be like a Boston accent, but there are others. So even within the United States, there are people who pronounce their R's more like they do in the UK. And there are places can't remember of any off the top of my head, but there are places in the UK that actually do use a harder R sound in some of the various regional dialects. So even though there is a right and a wrong in terms of the large scale ones, once you bore down to the smaller scale sets, that may not be right or wrong anymore.
And also, Andrew talks about proper, in inverted commas, proper phonetics, and in one sense that there isn't really such a thing. I mean, phonetics is about looking at is a way of examining the variations. But if there is such a thing, then it isn't. I don't think it's really about the sounds that are made. It's about the physical aspect. Like I said, phonetics or pronunciation is physical, and if you look at the definitions of the words and the actual of the phonemes and their actual sort of scientific names, like there's things like nasal affricates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All those
Fricatives,
words, fricatives, all those words refer to what's happening physically.
Yeah, a placement more than a sound.
Yeah, exactly. They're not talking about sound. They're talking about how physically the sound is produced. Now, if you look at the sound ch, for example, and you do physically what you need to do to make that sound, when you make that sound, you're going to make that sound. Mm-hmm. You're not going to make a sound or a th sound if you physically do what you need to do to say ch. So I guess proper phonetics is about the physicality, rather than the sound. But then that's different to sort of looking at accent and different ways of pronouncing things, because then some you might have the same word that's spelt the same. It's literally the same word but you might write it phonetically differently if you're representing the British pronunciation versus an American pronunciation.
For sure. And there's different goals that people have in terms of their pronunciation. A person that has a very strong regional accent that wants to maybe move to a different place, or they want to maybe be a YouTube personality or whatever, and so they want to kind of make their language, their accent conform to a broader audience that's going to understand them, then that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to shift away from their regional accent.
That
maybe
happened to me.
Someone who's and maybe someone who's learning English, has moved to the UK or moved to Canada or the US. Their goal might be to pronounce the words enough like the people around them that they can be easily understood, right? So maybe your goal is you are an actor and you want to be able to be in Shakespearean plays or something and do a good British accent. So people have different goals when it comes to pronunciation. So there's a lot of different targets. So what's the right way to do it is, in some ways, it's not the right question to ask, because it's going to differ from person to person. It
depends on your goal, exactly. And like you said, that happened to me. Like when I started teaching English, my own English changed. I think it got better. In fact, I just made a mistake that I instead of better, I should say better. And that's another. I think that's quite a British thing to drop those
I think
T's.
A lot of people here say it too. The double T's especially. A lot of people kind of soften that. I think a double T is a separate phoneme in some languages or some dialects. Like, again, I can't think of the example off the top of my head, but
it may be. I mean, the phonetic chart that we refer to. In fact, hang on, I can show it to you here. I've got it. The phonetic chart that is here behind me. This is not all of the symbols in the IPA. There's a lot more symbols, but these are just the ones that we use in English. So there are other phonemes that are used, other sounds that are used in other languages that aren't in English.
Or maybe sometimes are only used within a regional dialect or in slang in English. Because there are sounds that we don't really use officially that people do still use on occasion.
Yeah.
And that's, again, like, you can have perfect textbook English, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to communicate as effectively with everyone around you, because it largely depends on what kind of English they are using.
Yeah. So, it's coming up to an hour that we've been going now. And this is the first time I've done a live stream in a few weeks. I did one a few weeks ago, just looking at comments. It was kind of just an experiment to see how many people would tune in. But we are, I think we've said that we're going to do some more of these during the process between now and the 1st of June. As we develop the course, The Logic of English, we're going to do some more to sort of let people know what we've been working on, how we're getting on, to share what we've learned during the process of writing it, and to hopefully get more people to sign up. Are we going to do the same thing next Monday?
Are we going to do Monday?
It's Tuesday. Yeah.
It's Tuesday now, yeah.
It's Tuesday. Either's good for me. Well, anyway, so yeah, it doesn't. We don't need to decide now. But if you check the channel, as well as I'm going to make a page on my website, which will basically just embed the next live stream. So that'll probably be like englishlanguageclub.co.uk/live, but I'll make a link to it from the homepage as well, so it should be obvious. If you want to know when our next live stream is going to be, that will be the best way to find out. englishlanguageclub.co.uk. I'll put a link in the description. So yeah, we'll be doing this a few more times between now and the 1st of June, and we'll be getting a lot more into the grammar. So yeah, who was it who was asking about the tenses? Yeah, Rajulesh. Yes, Rajulesh. Make sure you check it out, because we'll be getting into all the tenses over the next few weeks. Yeah, stay tuned. Anything else you want to add, Tony?
No, I'm really excited. I think, again, we've got some really great ideas that we want to share that we think are really going to help people. You've talked a lot about helping people kind of make that difficult step from a beginner intermediate level, being able to be understood and you're okay, but you still make a lot of mistakes, to that advanced level where you sound more natural and people aren't necessarily catching you in mistakes. That's tough. It's a big step to take, and I think that we have some ideas that are really going to help some people do that. So I'm very excited, and I think it'll be great to kind of share some of these ideas as we go along in the live streams, and then when the course goes live, I think a lot of people will find it very helpful.
Yeah. So stay tuned. Lots of changes coming, lots of improvements coming, and lots of content coming. So see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.